Well, we're looking at Venezuela. It's a very sad situation. That was the richest state in all of that area. That's a big, beautiful area, and by far the richest. And now it's one of the poorest places in the world. That's what socialism gets you.
President Trump on the chaos in Venezuela after recognizing President Maduro's opponent as the country's interim leader. Meanwhile, Maduro is ordering all Venezuelan diplomats to return home from the U.S. amid violent anti-government protests there. Former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson joins us now. He was also our ambassador to the UN. Governor, welcome. Thank you for coming on the program.
Sandra. Thank you.
What do we need to know about the situation in Venezuela?
Well, we put Maduro on the defensive. We, the United States, several other countries, by what I think is a bold move to recognize the opposition leader. In the past, Maduro has outsmarted his opponents. The opposition has been divided, but now he's on the defensive. What do we look at, Sandra, is what will the Venezuelan military do? Now, so far, they've pledged their support for Maduro, but there's erosion. He's on the defensive. I think there's a lot of momentum building by the Venezuelan people who are losing their homes, their jobs, they're hungry, inflation is huge. I think that we made the right move, but now we've got to protect our diplomats. I don't think we need military intervention, but we got to protect our people there that are going to stay. So that's objective one.
There's a lot of ways that the U.S. was looking to put pressure on Venezuela. How did the president's decision to back Guaido, how did this come to be?
Well, it seems to me that this opposition leader was elected in the Venezuelan Congress, and I believe that he caught the imagination. He's 35 years old, a young guy. The opposition had been divided in the past. He declared himself president. And, you know, he made a bold move, too. Then we followed suit, the Organization of American States, several other countries, major countries in Latin America, with Mexico being the exception. That was a little disappointing in my view, because they have a new president there. But what else? Pressure? Sandra, I think we got to be very careful. The president mentioned the fact that Venezuela has a lot of oil. America buys a lot of Venezuelan oil. If we put oil sanctions, gasoline prices would go up. So I think we got to be very careful. There's a lot of refineries in the Gulf Coast, Citgo, that are important to the United States. So I think we continue the diplomatic pressure, try to get a dialogue with the Venezuelan military. What they do is key. If they say to Maduro, you got to have free and fair elections, maybe that's the way out, because most likely he would lose.
Sounds like you're describing a pretty delicate balance here. Here's Florida Senator Marco Rubio on Venezuela last night.
What I support is having every option available to us. It is always an option. I'm not saying that this is the case here. It's not for me to decide that. It's not for me to speak to that. I'm telling you, though, the U.S. has always had the right and continues to have the right to act in our national security interest. That said, our goal here is a peaceful transition of power, is a reestablishment of democracy, elections very soon.
So he's making the case to keep military option on the table.
Well, you say that, but really in Latin America it hasn't worked for us. It's put a lot of governments against us. But I think Senator Rubio, who had a key role in, I think, persuading the administration to move ahead and recognize this opposition leader, is on the right path. Peaceful transfer of power. And that, for me, means elections, internationally supervised elections. But the only ones that are going to persuade Maduro to do this is the Venezuelan military, Cuba, that has a lot of influence with Maduro, and then countries like Mexico that so far have backed them, turn on them and say, you need to have elections. I think that's the key. That's a peaceful transfer of power.
Other countries, including Canada, Germany, Haiti, also threw their support between the opposition leader. Here's Sarah Sanders on all of this, White House press secretary.
We are supporting the National Assembly. We'd like to see some sense of order in Venezuela, and we'll see how things play out. We're thankful for the other countries that have followed our lead and joined us in supporting the National Assembly.
And I guess that's where we are today. We'll see how things play out. Final thoughts from you, Governor.
Well, you know I'm not a big fan of the president's foreign policy, but on this issue, it was a bold move what they did, recognizing the assembly leader. They roll the dice, they change the dynamic, but I think we have to be careful. Don't intervene militarily. Do it diplomatically. Get a dialogue with the Venezuelan military. Find a way to say to Cuba, look, you know, we got to resolve this thing. We're not talking to Cuba much, but don't proceed with oil sanctions. Be careful how we do it if we do it, because that affects a lot of people.
All right, so we will, as the press secretary said, see how things play out. Governor Richardson, great to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you, sir.